Steve Chaggaris is our senior political editor. He joins us from our Washington bureau now. Steve, I want to get into the White House statement first. But first, let's play some of what Jeff Sessions actually had to say last night on Fox News.
I don't recall any discussion of the campaign in any significant way. It was in no way some sort of coordinating of an effort or doing anything improper. And I don't believe anybody that was in that meeting would have seen or believed I said one thing that was improper or unwise. And it was really a sad thing to be attacked like that. But I think we've explained it, and we intend to move forward.
So, Steve, he says that this happened. This meeting took shape when he was in the capacity of senator, not as campaign advisor. But why not mention it when he was asked about it in the hearing?
That is the ultimate question that we don't seem to have a real good answer to. You would think that with the pressure that was on the Trump campaign and then the Trump transition regarding the Russia issue, that any connection to Russia that anybody had would have been disclosed. You would just think out of caution you would just do that. This was such an albatross around the neck of Trump and his campaign and his transition, yet it was not mentioned at all by Sessions. It's just sort of strange. And as we're getting more details about these two encounters that he had with the Russian ambassador, it actually sounds like it's probably fairly innocent, which again raises more questions as to why didn't you just come clean when you had the opportunity to do so, as opposed to allowing it to stay in the background and then eventually get leaked out. And now it looks like maybe perhaps that it looks worse than it actually was.
So this Russian ambassador seems to be the most forgettable man in Washington these days. Not only Jeff Sessions, but now additional members of the Trump orbit apparently had contact with him. What can you tell us about that?
Well, so there were other members of Trump's national security. There were national security advisors that met with him during the campaign. And it also turns out that his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, met with him during the transition. The two that met with him during the campaign raises the big question, because the Trump campaign was so adamant, and they had said publicly that nobody involved with the campaign met with any Russian officials at all. That had been said repeatedly by people in the Trump world, and it now turns out that there were at least two, not including Sessions, but at least two people who were directly on advisors to Trump on national security issues who did meet with him.
So, Steve, explain this. The Wall Street Journal reported today that campaign funds paid for Sessions to attend the Republican convention, where one of his meetings was with the ambassador that took place. Explain the significance of this.
I actually think there's very little significance here. First of all, a senator who is going to a convention, a political convention, is going to pay for that travel out of his political funds. These were funds that were paid for out of Sessions campaign funds, not Trump campaign funds, which actually lends to the argument that Sessions was there as a senator, not as a member of the campaign. Now, I think what people are trying to say here is, well, because he paid for this out of political money, then, that shows that he wasn't actually there in the role of a senator. But you look at any member of Congress who is going to a political convention, they're paying for that trip and for their lodging out of political funds. You can't use your Senate office funds, taxpayer money, to go to these kinds of events. So I don't think there's much significance to this at all.
Now, the Trump administration is also rehashing the issue of leaks out of the administration. Two journalists, they have a two-pronged approach here. On the one hand, claiming that journalists don't have sources, but then on the other hand, trying to crack down on said sources. How wise do you think this strategy is for them?
Well, there's no question it's a diversionary tactic on their part, and I think it helps, at least with Republicans in Congress. They do have a legitimate argument that they're dealing with information that is supposed to be, whether it's classified or what the classification is, it's supposed to be under wraps. And for that information to be getting out, they have a reasonable argument to say we need to look into why this information is getting out there. However, they're not really getting to the bottom of the original problem, which is all these contacts with Russian officials, and frankly, they're not getting to the bottom of their own communication problems in terms of dealing with the crisis that they're facing, which is trying to explain all these contacts with Russian officials.
So the White House calls this a witch hunt. Moscow has used the same language. We keep hearing about new aspects of this. We also know that there's a new advisor that's going to come into the White House who has a different stance than some might think that the White House is going on Russia. So when you parse all this together, do we have any idea where the White House is going on Russia foreign policy in general?
No, we don't. I mean, and that's, there's so many questions that are surrounding what is this Russia and Trump connection, right? And I think what the Trump campaign, then transition, and now administration has done in terms of communicating all of this is it's really just sort of fostered this environment where more questions just keep arising, and very few answers are coming from the Trump world. And so, they have not done a very good job. In fact, they've done a terrible job of crisis communications around this. I think the Sessions example is one where they should have just sat down with everybody who's being vetted for whatever in the administration and said, did you have any contact whatsoever with anybody involving Russia? Find out what the deal is, get all that stuff out of the way, because what is winding up happening now is there's so much smoke. Whether there's actual fire or not, we don't know, but there's so much smoke surrounding the Russia issue that it's clouding anything that they want to do in terms of policy moving forward, or anything to do with dealing or trying to dispense with dealing with this crisis.
Hope you've bought a gas mask for all the smoke there, Steve, blowing up in Washington. Our Steve Chaggaris, thank you so much for joining us, Steve.
Thanks.
And folks, don't forget this week on The Takeout, President Obama's former chief speechwriter, Cody Keenan, and President George W. Bush's speechwriter, Jonathan Horn, joined Major Garrett and Steve Chaggaris. Topic of discussion, President Trump's rhetoric. What is it looking like for their bosses? Download it on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, anywhere you get your podcast, you'll find it, and we promise you will love it.
It's a lot of fun. They do a great job on that.